Two men of great fortune once gave me directly opposite counsel upon the same question, and I have spent a lifetime discovering that both were correct. Andrew Carnegie told me that opportunity arrives disguised as misfortune, and that a man must seize it in the instant it appears, or it will pass him and go to another. Thomas Edison told me something that seemed to contradict it entirely. He told me that opportunity comes to no man until he has failed at the same thing so many times that the failure has taught him what nothing else could teach him. One says the moment is sudden, the other says the moment is earned. For years I could not reconcile them. Then I understood. They were describing the same law from opposite ends of it. The turn in a man's life is always sudden, and it is never accidental. It arrives on the day he is finally ready to receive it, and not one day before, and not one day after. You did not stumble onto this message. You arrived at it carrying something you have carried too long. 5 parts follow. By the last one, you will know which day this is. Part I. The day arrives disguised. There was a man who was dismissed from a position he had held for a great many years. He had been reliable. He had been punctual. He had done what was asked of him and had assumed, as men do, that this would be sufficient. And then, on an ordinary afternoon, he was told his services were no longer required, and he walked home through streets he had walked 1,000 times, and every one of them looked different. He did not tell his wife that evening. He sat in a chair and calculated how long the money would last, and the answer was not long, and he concluded that his life was substantially over. Years afterward, when he had built something considerable, he told me that he regarded that afternoon as the most fortunate of his life. He said it without sentiment. He said it as a man states a fact of arithmetic, because that dismissal did what nothing else in 20 years had been able to do. It removed the thing he had been leaning against. And a man who has nothing left to lean against will finally stand. Opportunity does not carry a sign, "I want to correct something in your thinking," because it is costing you more than you know.
Real quick, I just want to speak from the heart for a second. Thank you. I mean it. You showing up here over and over is the reason I get to do what I love. And I never want that to become something I take for granted. Whether life is treating you kindly right now or you're going through one of the harder chapters, I'm just really glad you're here with me. We found each other for a reason, and I don't say that lightly. By the way, if that free sheet's still sitting there undownloaded, grab it now. I made it because I think it can genuinely help you. No rush. Mostly, I just want to say I'm grateful you're here.
You have been waiting for opportunity to announce itself. You expect it to arrive as a door plainly marked, a man in a good coat with an offer, a moment you will recognize immediately as the one you have been waiting for. It almost never comes in that fashion. Opportunity has a sly habit of slipping in by the back door, and frequently it comes disguised in the form of misfortune or temporary defeat. Perhaps this is why so many men fail to recognize it. The disguise is not incidental. It is the essential feature of the thing. It is precisely because the day looks like a calamity that the ordinary man walks past it, and it is left standing there for the one man in 100 who has learned to look twice. Consider what a disguise accomplishes. It sorts men. It ensures that the reward goes not to the man who happened to be standing nearby, but to the man who possessed the understanding to examine what had just happened to him, instead of merely suffering it. The drifter, and the same afternoon I have studied the causes of failure for the greater part of my life, and I will tell you what separates the drifter from the man who rises. It is not that they meet different days. They meet the identical day. 2 men are dismissed on the same afternoon. 2 men are refused by the same lender. 2 men are left by the same kind of woman, disappointed in the same kind of partner, defeated in the same kind of venture. The drifter meets that day and calls it bad luck. He files it with all the other evidence he has been collecting for years, evidence that the world is arranged against him, that men of his sort do not get on, that he was correct all along to expect little. The day arrives carrying instruction, and he refuses delivery. The non-drifter meets that day and asks it a question. He asks what it came to teach him. He asks what it has removed from his life that he had not the courage to remove himself. He asks what he can now do that he could not have done while the old arrangement stood. The difference is not fortune. The difference is not intelligence. The difference is a habit of mind, formed deliberately, which treats every unwelcome circumstance as a message rather than a verdict. What has just gone wrong? So I will ask you now to stop waiting for the day to announce itself, and I will ask you to do something more useful instead. Examine what has recently gone wrong, not what you hope will go right. What has gone wrong? The loss, the refusal, the closed door, the thing that fell apart in the last months and left you where you presently stand. Look at it directly. Ask what it removed. Ask what it made possible that was not possible before. Because I tell you plainly, the day before everything shifts does not feel like the day before everything shifts. It feels like the worst week of the year. Part 2, the one decision that moves the date. There was a young man who had no money, no training, and no acquaintance with any man of consequence. What he had was a wish, and then one day the wish stopped being a wish. He determined that he would go into business with Thomas A. Edison, not work for him, not learn from him, partner with him. He had never met the man. He had no means of reaching West Orange, New Jersey. So he rode there on a freight train, arriving looking like a tramp, and presented himself and announced that he had come to go into business with Mr. Edison. Edison said afterward that he stood there looking like an ordinary tramp, but there was something in the expression of his face which conveyed the impression that he was determined to get what he had come after. Edison gave him a job sweeping floors. Months went by, then years. He swept and he waited, and to every eye but his own he was a clerk of no importance. Then Edison perfected a dictating machine which his salesman did not want and could not sell. And this young man, who had been preparing in silence for exactly such a moment, said he could sell it. He did sell it. He sold it so successfully that Edison gave him a contract to distribute it throughout the nation, and he became a wealthy man. His name was Edwin C. Barnes. Now mark this carefully, for it is the whole lesson. The shift in his life did not begin on the day Edison agreed to the partnership. It began on the freight train years earlier, when a man with no reason for confidence decided and then acted upon the decision before he had any evidence that it would work. Decision converts an ordinary day. Here is what I want you to take from that story. The day itself has no power. Days are all alike. What converts an ordinary Tuesday into the hinge upon which a whole life turns is one thing only, and that thing is a decision that will not be retreated from. I analyzed several thousand men and women who had failed, and near the very head of the list of causes stood the lack of decision, not lack of ability, not lack of opportunity, not lack of education or capital or connections. The plain inability to reach a decision and stand upon it. And when I examined the successful, I found the opposite habit so consistently that I came to regard it as a mark of the breed. Men who accumulate fortunes reach decisions promptly and change them slowly, if and when they are changed at all. Men who fail reach decisions very slowly and change them frequently and quickly. Read that again and apply it to yourself honestly. Which description fits the man you have been this past year? Indecision is not neutrality. I must take a comfort away from you now. You have been telling yourself that you have not yet decided, that you are considering, that you are waiting until the situation clarifies, until the money is easier, until you are more certain. You have decided. You decided this morning and yesterday morning and every morning for however long this has been going on. You decided to remain exactly where you are. Indecision is not a neutral condition. It is not a pause in the proceedings. It is a decision made freshly every day, renewed every day, and enforced every day, and it is producing results with perfect efficiency. Look about you. The results are your present circumstances. The man who cannot decide has not avoided a choice. He has merely arranged to make the same choice repeatedly without ever having to admit that he made it. 56 men and 1 afternoon. Let me put before you the largest demonstration of this law that history affords. On a summer day, 56 men signed a document which, had their cause failed, would have cost every one of them his life. They knew it when they signed. There was no ambiguity about the penalty for what they were doing. They did not sign because they were certain of the outcome. They could not possibly have been certain. They signed because they had reached a decision, and having reached it, they did the thing that decision requires. They closed the door behind them, and the world rearranged itself around that afternoon. A nation exists because 56 men would not retreat from a decision. If a decision can do that, consider what one decision might do to the small and manageable circumstances of one ordinary life. The decision you have postponed. So here is your work, and I want it done before this speech reaches its end. Name the one decision you have postponed for more than a year. You know it already. You did not have to search for it. It presented itself the moment I spoke the word. It has been standing at the edge of your mind through every part of this message, waiting to be addressed. Make it. Not investigate it further. Not consider it once more. Make it, and then, before you sleep tonight, take one physical action that makes retreat expensive. Barnes did not decide and then wait for conditions. He decided and got on the train. Part 3. The hour after the turned two men came to the same wall in the gold country of Colorado, and only one of them is remembered. The first had staked a claim and struck a vein of ore. He raised money from his relatives, brought in drilling machinery, and set to work, and then the vein disappeared. He drilled on for a while, found nothing, and concluded that he had been mistaken about the whole business. He sold the machinery to a junk man for a few $100s and took the train home. The junk man did something the first man had not thought to do. He called in an engineer. The engineer examined the mine and reported that the vein would be found again 3 feet from where the drilling had stopped. 3 feet. The junk man took millions of dollars in ore out of that mine. The man who quit was named R.U. Darby. The day looks like the moment to stop. Now, I want you to notice something about that story which is more important than the money. Darby did not quit because he was lazy. He was not lazy. He had raised the capital, hauled the machinery, and dug through hard rock for a considerable time. He quit because the evidence told him to quit, and the evidence was wrong. Not slightly wrong. Wrong by 3 feet, with a fortune sitting on the other side of it. This is the great difficulty with the day before everything shifts. It does not present itself as a beginning. It presents itself as the moment at which any sensible man would stop. Before success comes in any man's life, he is sure to meet with much temporary defeat and perhaps some failure. When defeat overtakes a man, the easiest and the most logical thing to do is to quit. That is exactly what the majority of men do. Failure is a trickster with a keen sense of irony. It takes great delight in tripping a man up when success is almost within his reach.
Before this video ends, make a decision. Keep wishing for money or start attracting it on purpose. Getting rich was never an accident. It's a mind trained to expect wealth. I've made the first step free for you. One page that reprograms your money mind. Go to the second-life.com, download your free Get Rich auto suggestion sheet, and begin tonight. Don't let this be one more video you watched and forgot. Links in the description.
Persistence is not a temperament. Men speak of persistence as though it were a quality of character which one either possesses or lacks, as though some men were born with a great store of it and others with none, and nothing could be done about the distribution. That is false, and it is a convenient falsehood, because it excuses the man who quits. Persistence is a state of mind, and therefore it can be cultivated. Like all states of mind, it is built upon definite causes, and I will name them for you. Definiteness of purpose. Knowing what one wants is the first and perhaps the most important step toward the development of persistence. A strong motive forces a man over difficulties which would stop a man with no motive at all. Desire. It is comparatively easy to acquire and to maintain persistence in pursuing the object of an intense desire. Weak desire brings weak results, precisely as a small fire brings a small amount of heat, self-reliance. Belief in one's ability to carry out a plan encourages a man to follow it through. And I remind you that self-reliance may be developed by the principle of autosuggestion repeated nightly until belief is manufactured where none existed. Definite plans. Organized plans, even weak ones, encourage persistence. The man with a plan continues because he knows what to do next. The man without one stops because he does not. The seed dug out by hand, here is the part of Darby's story that most men never hear. After that failure, Darby went into the business of selling life insurance. And he made a decision that he would never again stop because a man had told him no. He kept the memory of those 3 feet before him like a wound he refused to allow to heal. He became one of the few men in the country who sold more than $1 million in life insurance annually. And he said openly that he owed his entire fortune to the lesson he had learned by quitting in the gold mine. Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. But mark the word seed, not the fruit. The seed which must be found and recognized and planted and worked. It does not sprout by itself. 10,000 men have quit 3 feet from gold and learned nothing whatever from it and gone on quitting for the remainder of their days. Darby dug his lesson out by hand. That is the only way any man has ever got one. The resistance is the measure. So I will tell you what to make of the resistance you are feeling at this moment, and I know you are feeling it because a man does not seek out a message such as this one in a season of ease. That resistance is not evidence against you. It is a measurement. The strain a man feels is greatest in the final stretch, when the reserves are lowest and the evidence looks worst, and the sensible course is plainly to set the thing down. That is the hour Darby met. That is the hour the majority meet, and hand the machinery to a junk man and go home. You are not being told to stop. You are being told how close you are. Part 4, what must be left behind. There was a man of real ability who conceived a sound idea. He had worked it through completely. He knew it would function, and he knew that if it were put before the right men, it would be built. He carried it about with him for 11 months. He did not lack money. He did not lack opportunity. He had a dozen occasions upon which he might have spoken. He kept silent because he could hear in advance the laughter of the men in the room. He could see their faces. He could hear one of them asking who he supposed he was to be having ideas. In the 12th month, another man announced substantially the same idea, built it, and grew wealthy upon it. And the first man read of it in the newspaper and understood in a single sickening instant that he had not been beaten by a superior mind. He had been beaten by a sound he manufactured in his own head. The 2 gatekeepers. There are 6 basic fears which afflict mankind, and I have written of all 6. But 2 of them stand directly in the doorway of every man's turning day, and I will name them. The fear of criticism robs a man of his initiative and destroys his imagination. It is the fear that makes a man dress as his neighbors dress, think as his neighbors think, want what his neighbors want, and then wonder, in his 40th year, why his life so exactly resembles theirs. The fear of poverty is the most destructive of the 6. It paralyses reason, destroys initiative, kills enthusiasm, and discourages self-reliance, and it accomplishes all of this while wearing the mask of prudence. The man in its grip believes he is being sensible. He is not being sensible. He is arranging his life around the assumption of defeat. These 2 stand at the door. Every man who has ever crossed a threshold has had to walk past them. The affectionate voices, I must warn you about something which will occur probably within days, and which catches men entirely unprepared because they expect opposition to arrive in the form of enemies. It does not. It arrives in the form of people who love you. There exists in most men a weakness which I have called susceptibility to negative influence and unguarded mind, into which any passing suggestion may be planted, and in which it will grow. And when you make your decision, the suggestions will come. Your relations will explain, gently and with real affection, why the timing is unwise. Your friends will remind you of the last time. Someone will say, in a tone of genuine kindness, that they only want you to be realistic. They are not malicious. That is precisely what makes them dangerous. A man will guard himself against an enemy and lie wide open to his brother. You must close the door, not upon the people, upon the discussion. Your definite chief aim is not a subject for debate at a dinner table, and the man who submits his purpose to a committee will not keep it a fortnight. Something must be set down. Now I come to the law beneath this part, and it is the one I hold to be most important of all. Men are not ruined by great catastrophes. They are ruined by rhythm, by the small, repeated surrender, performed so often that it hardens into a groove from which the man cannot climb out and would not know how, even should he wish to. This is what I have called hypnotic rhythm, and here is why it concerns you today. You cannot carry the old groove across the threshold. The habits which produce the life you presently have will produce it again. They are not neutral. They are not merely inefficient. They are actively manufacturing your circumstances faithfully every day, and they will continue to do so on the other side of any decision you make, unless something is deliberately set down. There is no something for nothing, not in this world and not in this teaching. The price is paid in advance, and it is paid not chiefly in effort, but in what a man is willing to stop being. The thing you must stop tonight, so name it, not the thing you intend to start. You have named a dozen of those over the years and started none of them. Name the thing you must stop, the hour surrendered nightly to amusement that returns nothing. The company that leaves you smaller than it found you. The complaint you have rehearsed so long it has become the chief furniture of your mind. Set it down tonight, not next month, not on the first of the year. A man cannot pick up a new life with both hands full. Part V. You were ready before you knew it. There was a young preacher in Chicago who carried an idea in his mind for years. He wished to found a school of a new kind, a place where young men might be trained in practical work as well as in books. He knew exactly what he wanted. He had worked out the whole of it. And he had no money whatever, and no prospect of obtaining any, and no wealthy man had ever taken the slightest interest in him. So he waited. Years went by in this fashion, and the idea sat in his mind like a machine no one had troubled to start. Then one evening he sat down and did a thing that separated him permanently from the men among whom he had been standing. He said to himself, I need $1 million. I am going to get $1 million. And I shall begin on Sunday. He announced from his pulpit that he would preach a sermon entitled, What I Would Do If I Had $1 Million. He wrote it through the night. He rose in the morning, knelt, and asked that he might meet the man who could supply what was needed. Then he delivered that sermon with his whole soul behind every word of it. When he had finished, a man rose from the back of the hall, walked the length of the aisle, put out his hand, and said that he had liked the sermon and that if the preacher would come to his office in the morning, he would give him the $1 million. That man was Philip D. Armour. The preacher was Frank W. Gonzales. The Armour Institute of Technology exists because of that evening. He had wanted it for years. He obtained it in less than 36 hours. The years were not wasted. Now here is the thing about that story which most men miss entirely, and it is the reason I have placed it last. Gonzales had those years, 10 years of carrying an idea with no money, 10 years of preaching to modest congregations and going home to no fortune and no prospects and no sign whatever that the thing would ever come to anything.
Let me make you an offer the old teachers never could. For the price of lunch, I'll walk you through 14 days of the exact auto-suggestion ritual, a daily money decree, the identity work, all of it, to pull your first unexpected $100 into your life. And that 100 isn't the point. It's the proof these teachings actually work. If nothing shows up, you pay nothing. That's the 14-day money magnet protocol. Test this law on your own life. Go to the second link in the description.
And a man in that position naturally concludes that the years were wasted, that he began too late, that the best of his life went by while he was preparing for something that never arrived. But when the evening came, he was ready for it. He knew precisely what the school would be. He knew the sum. He knew what the money would be used for down to the particulars. Armour did not hand $1 million to a man with a vague enthusiasm. He handed it to a man who had spent 10 years becoming qualified to receive it, and who could answer every question put to him without hesitation. The delay contained the qualification. I say this to you directly, because I believe it is the thing you most need to hear. The years you regard as wasted were the years in which you were made fit for what is coming. Every adversity carries the seed of an equivalent benefit, and your long delay carried yours. The instructed mind sees the day, and now I will tell you the whole of why some men recognize their day and others walk past it. The subconscious mind is the connecting link between the finite mind of man and infinite intelligence. It is the intermediary through which a man may draw upon forces he does not understand and cannot see, but it must be given a definite instruction. It does not argue with you. It does not select on your behalf. It receives what is handed to it and goes to work. The man who has told his deeper mind precisely what he intends to possess has set a watchman inside himself, and that watchman is awake when the day comes. He sees the opening. He recognizes the man who ought to be spoken to. He knows, without deliberation, that this is the thing that must not be permitted to pass. The vague mind has no watchman. The same day arrives, the same opening appears, and the man walks by it and feels nothing, and reads afterward of what another man did with it. Gonzales's evening had probably arrived a dozen times before. He had simply not been definite enough to see it. Hear me now, and hear me plainly, for I am nearly done. In a few moments this message will end, and there will be a short silence in which you will decide something, and you will very likely not notice that you are deciding it. You will either reach for the nearest amusement and permit this hour to dissolve as 10,000 hours before it have dissolved, or you will do the three things I have told you to do. Write the aim, the exact sum or condition, the date by which you intend to possess it, and what you will give in return. Speak it aloud tonight, before sleep, with feeling behind every word, and take one physical step, one that makes retreat expensive. Send the letter, make the call, say the thing out loud to the person who needs to hear it. Barnes did not decide and then wait for conditions. He decided and got on the train. Do not tell me you will begin tomorrow. Tomorrow is the drifter's country, and every man who was ever ruined was ruined there, in comfort, with excellent intentions. Because tomorrow is the day only for the man who acts today. And I will leave you with this, which I want you to carry when the rest of it has faded. This message did not find you. You arrived. Let me tell you one more thing before I release you. Because I have been at this work a long while, and I know what happens next. Most of you will do nothing. I say that without bitterness and without accusation. I say it because it is the plain finding of a lifetime of observation, and because I have discovered that men are far more likely to act when they have been told honestly what the odds are against them. You have felt something in the last half hour. Something moved in you. The blood came up a little, and the mind cleared, and for a few minutes you saw the man you might be as though he were standing in the room. And here is what will happen to that feeling. Unless you interrupt it, by morning it will have thinned. By the third day you will remember that you heard something worthwhile, but you will not be able to say precisely what. By the end of the month it will have joined the great pile of good intentions you have accumulated over the years, a pile which grows heavier every year of a man's life and which weighs upon him more than any failure ever did. Because a man is not chiefly wounded by his defeats. He is wounded by the things he saw clearly and did not do. Why the feeling is not the point. I want you to understand something about the sensation you have just experienced. Because men mistake it constantly, and the mistake is fatal. That feeling is not progress. It is not evidence of change. It is not the beginning of anything. It is merely the mind recognizing a truth it already knew. And recognition costs nothing, which is precisely why it is so pleasant, and precisely why it purchases nothing whatever. The man who mistakes emotion for action will spend his entire life in a condition of perpetual almost. He will be forever on the verge. He will consume 1,000 messages such as this one and feel stirred by every one of them and remain at 60, exactly the man he was at 30, and he will not understand why. And he will conclude that the teachings were false. The teachings were not false. He simply enjoyed them instead of using them. The distance is one action. There is one thing, and only one, standing between the man who feels this and the man who becomes it. A single physical act, performed before sleep tonight. Not a plan, not a resolution, not a promise made to yourself in the dark, for you have made a great many of those and you know what they are worth. An act, something that exists in the world after you have done it, something another person can see, something that cannot be quietly withdrawn tomorrow when the feeling has passed. Write the statement on paper and place it where you must see it upon waking, or send the letter you have been composing in your head for a safe year, or say the sentence aloud to the person who has been waiting to hear it. One act, that is the entire distance, not the whole road. I am not asking for the road. I am asking for the first step, which is the only step any man has ever been required to take, because no man has ever been required to take the second one until he had taken the first. What tomorrow will look like, and now understand what tomorrow will actually look like, so that you are not deceived by it. It will not look transformed. You will wake in the same room. The same accounts will be unpaid. The same people will speak to you in the same tone, and the same difficulty that stood before you yesterday will still be standing there. Nothing outward will have changed at all, but you will have done one thing you have never done. And the man who has done one thing is a different species from the man who has done none, though the difference is invisible to everyone but himself. That is how these turns are made, not in a blaze, in a small, unwitnessed act performed by a tired man on an ordinary night who was persuaded, briefly, that he was capable of more than he had been living. You have been persuaded. The persuasion will not last. Use it while it is here.
Here's the gap between the people who manifest wealth and the people who only watch videos about it. The wealthy install the idea daily until the mind accepts it as already done. You can't do that from memory. You need it in front of you. That's why I made the free auto-suggestion sheet. One page, read it morning and night, and you start reprogramming your self-image around money. It's free at the first link in the description.